What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you a Blue Eyes variant that a lot of you have been requesting, and today it is the turn of Blue Eyes Albaz. Now the concept of this deck, all credit goes to Yugioh Carranza. Now they were the person that got top 16 at YCS Vegas. They decided to use a very, very small Albaz engine. They literally played like one form of Albaz, and then they played the extra deck monsters. What Albaz adds to the deck is it's a great target that can come off the back of the Heretic Seals, which can ultimately end up locking your opponent into dragons because you'll make the Sanctified Dragon, you'll give your opponent the Link 1. Now I've kind of moved a little bit away from that. Yes, that is still a factor of the deck, but if you don't want to play the lock version at all, by all means you just take out Sanctified Dragon and you can still just go down into Mirror Jade, and that can be just as powerful. The idea is that you're going to use either Fallen of Albaz as a starter, as it is a level 4 or lower dragon, so it kind of increases your count if you don't see what you need to see, and you kind of don't always resolve your Sage. You can still go normal summon Albaz, turn it into the Link 1, get your field spell, additional normal summon, and build from there. But then on top of that as well, it's a really good board breaker because you can normal summon it and then use the effect to discard a card to then force out an interaction. Or of course, you'll then end up going into something like Mirror Jade or Lubellion. And then there are kind of other routes that could work with it. And the ideal scenario is you summon it off of the back of the Heretic Seals. The Heretic Seals, of course, would provide you with a return from the field to the hand. And then of course, your Albaz will be able to trigger as a quick effect because it's been summoned at that point to discard a card and then technically contact fuse either into a Lubellion, Albion, or of course, Mirror Jade. Off the back of that as well, I am playing one Branding in red. I might as well just show you the list as we're going. But just as another note of what else is in here, is a Branding in red just to kind of open up some other avenues for you. In the top 16 version, they were using Primites. I've basically taken out the space of the Primites and added in more hand traps, but you can pretty much add in whatever you want. You can add in a supporting engine in the form of something like Invoked if you wanted to. You can add the Primites if you have them. You can go for a heavier Bestial lineup. Basically, what you're trying to do is you'd be playing a very small Albaz engine. If at anything, you can play it as a minimum of one Albaz and kind of go from there. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So the Blue Eyes lineup is pretty standard on this one. So 2 Blue Eyes White Dragon and a Jet Dragon. Jet is completely optional. You can choose to take it out if you want. It's just actually served me really, really well when I've played Blue Eyes because the amount of times people forget about this card or the amount of times this can come down, the amount of times its battle effect comes into play is really, really important. And then, of course, you've got your standard Maidens at 3, your standard Sages at 3. You'll see that there is no Master, and that's for the pure fact that our additional summon is going to be our Sage, or it's going to be our Maiden if you get 2 of them. And you ideally want to be starting off with, of course, your Albaz, because if you're going first, Albaz can be utilized in that way. If you want to bury it in the deck, then you only play 1 copy of it. But like I've said, I've kind of taken this approach that Albaz can be my normal summon that threatens an interaction or a negate. Because let's be honest, if they don't imperm or Veiler or negate the Albaz is still then going to resolve to get you a Mirror Jade if they've got a monster special summon from the extra deck on the field. And then, of course, your Mirror Jade can send one from the extra deck to then banish. So you've got ways of being able to play around it and really kind of cause your opponent issues. And then what you can do with that one, at just the very least, is you go to the end phase. Usually you'll send Albion, and then you get an end phase branded in red. And then you can use Branding in red to fuse during your opponent's turn as well. So you're still getting some advantage from it. Obviously, it's not the ideal scenario. You don't want to be doing that. But it's just kind of another avenue you can explore with this build. And then, of course, 3 wishes, 1 Majesty, True Light, Mausoleum, and Roar. Again, if you want to, because Magia is now a little bit more easily accessible, I know that the pre-orders have now gone up to like £50 a copy at the lowest, but if you're able to pick them up cheaply, you can very easily add Priestess into this build and then Blue Eyes Ultimate with a Chaos Max, and then that will open up the door for you to be able to play Magia in your extra deck. It really is kind of up to you and your preference. Then for the Albaz engine, like I said, it's very, very minimal, which is why I've titled this video Blue Eyes featuring Albaz rather than Blue Eyes Albaz, because it technically doesn't dominate any part of the deck. That's basically like saying this is a Blue Eyes Ash Blossom deck. It just doesn't really work that way. So you play 3 Albaz and 1 Branding in red. These are completely optional. Like I said, if you want to play it as a minimum, you play 1 form of Albaz. That's all you really need. You can play any other supporting engine with this deck as well if you need to. But the idea behind this is I wanted Albaz to have a bit more of involvement inside the deck. I'm not saying it's the best way to play it, but this hybrid is kind of want it to be a little bit more utilized. And then it does give you that ability that as long as you're able to recycle Mirror Jade, you can play 2 if you want to. It also gives you that ability to kind of loop yourself back into other fusion monsters and go again with Albaz. And you can kind of adapt the extra deck as you see fit. And then for the hand traps, this is pretty much where like 50% of the deck comes in. It's not nice, I'm not going to lie to you. You can put in any supporting engine you want, which will make it a little bit better. But before I show you the hand traps, you know what your base level is, and then depending on what other engines you have access to, you can then just start to sub them in. So triple Ash Blossom, triple Droll, double Nibiru, double Ghost Ogre, double Veiler, double Ghost Bell, 1 Magnamute, 1 Druid Swarm, like pretty staple on that one. Triple Imperm, and then the final is a consistency card of Pot Prosperity. But this could be a Bull Drake, it could be a third Nibiru, it could be a third Veiler, it could be pretty much whatever you want. I don't agree with having this many hand traps in here, or I don't agree with having this many hand traps in a deck in general. But the difference is, at least with the Bull Drake, the Magnamute and the Druid Swarm, more so the Magnamute than anything else, it can still lead you to combo, which can work out quite nicely. But yeah, like literally 50% of this day is just hand traps because the engine is so small, which is why the competitive versions of this hybrid, they do play the Primite engine as well. Moving on to the extra deck. So for the extra deck for our Albaz kind of targets, you play the 1 Mirror Jade, Lubellion if your opponent summons a Dark Monster, Albion if they summon a Light Monster, and then of course you've got your Sanctified Dragon. So the idea is that you get to put back your Light Spellcaster, which will be Maiden, it'll be Sage, it could even be a Fet Veiler back into the deck. You'd make your Albion, and then use Albion's effect to summon back one of your monsters, but then you give the Blue Eyes Link 1, being your Spirit with Eyes of Blue, to your opponent. And then as long as you put all of your monsters in defense, it means the Blue Eyes Spirit can't just crash into your monsters to get them out of a Dragon Lock. Obviously, you don't want to Dragon Lock your opponent if they're playing Blue Eyes. It would be a silly thing to do, but that is just like a sub part of this kind of combo that you have access to. The last fusion monster that kind of stems from Branded in Red or Albaz kind of element, less so Albaz, because obviously you can't make it with Albaz, but you make it with Branded in Red, is Guardian Chimera. But this one could very easily be taken out for a second Spirit Dragon. You can focus less on the branded route in this extra deck if you want to as well, so you have complete flexibility. Then, of course, for the Link monsters, we do play the 2 Spirit and the 1 Hieratic Seals. You can double up the Hieratic Seals just because of that easy access to Albaz to then contact fuse or like fuse with your opponent's field can be very important. SP is just your generic kind of like Link 2 that helps you outfields. Tyrant and Neo's Ultimate. Again, if you're going to be putting Magia in here, you can sub out one of these cards for Magia. You'd probably sub out the Neo Blue Eyes for the Blue Eyes Ultimate, just because you're going to recycle it a lot more consistently with the Ultimate Fusion. And this one, like every time you equip a monster to your Blue Eyes, you're probably going to want it to be the Ultimate Dragon, because then that opens up the Magia route rather than anything else. And then, of course, got the 1 Typhon just as an option. You probably don't even need to rely on it that heavily anymore. But it's just so good at breaking fields. It can be very, very important for you. And then for the Synchros, of course, we just play the 1 Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, and then you get 2 Blue Eye Spirit Dragon targets. Obviously, you're probably only ever going to be able to summon 1, but you either go for the outs to the back row or you go for the Omni Negate, depending on which one you feel is going to be more effective for you at that particular moment in that particular matchup. If you want to lean more into the spirits, of course, you'd play a different hybrid of this deck. You do play a lot of the Albaz kind of targets, but that's just to kind of give you the balance of if they play a light or a dark. And then if you want to lock your opponent down, if you want to just go into a Mirror Jade, it really is up to you. Obviously, you want to try and avoid going Mirror Jade into Mirror Jade through the Albion, because you'll be using, well, technically you could use your Lubellion, would spin the materials back, but the Albion will banish the Albion from the field, which means you won't get access to your Branded in Red, and then it means you won't have that ideal target to send from the extra deck to the graveyard. Like, it's when you go through Lubellion that's when it's the best way of doing it, because then you go Mirror Jade, send Albion from the extra deck to the grave, and then that will walk you into a Branded in Red for the next turn, and then that's where multiple Albazes come into play. But that's pretty much it. It's a very straightforward, simple, to-the-point deck. There isn't anything crazy about it. It's just something that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of how the how Albaz can kind of be utilized in the deck. I got a lot of questions about, can I make a Blue Eyes branded deck? And honestly, the more and more I looked at it, the less and less it was actually viable. Just because branded want to lock you into fusions a little bit earlier. They lock you into fusions for the entire turn. So it does make it quite difficult to kind of navigate in the right way. And Blue Eyes really do want to utilize their Spirit Dragons, whether it be the Link monster or whether it be the Fusion monster, the Synchro monster. It kind of one of them ones that made it very tricky to actually make a playable hybrid, but this was like the closest you can probably get with it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.